4, 3, 2, 1. We're on. We are so on. Angela, you are on.
I'm on. Do you know?
I love doing this. It's so like, look at me. I'm so important.
So important?
Well, only when you jump on, then I'm automatically like.
What happened to her today? I was going to say, if we had caught this tomorrow, my hair would probably be blue.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's sad.
No, it's okay. No, I mean, no, blue. The other blue. There he is. I saw him a few minutes ago sitting there by himself.
Oh, God. I told my crew to be on this.
I showed up, asked if you were there, and then he left. I scared him.
Not at all.
I'm playing hide and seek. Yay! So we have Seth Swirsky with us. Yay!
Yay!
Everybody's applauding from the privacy of their own home.
That's it.
It's very exciting. Thank you so much for doing this interview with us. I'm really excited. So,
Total pleasure and honor, and thank
Yay.
you.
We have lots of questions for you tonight. Are you prepared?
I hope not. I'm trying not to be prepared because I want to just answer right when I hear it. Just like hearing a song for the first time. You know, hearing a song.
You're right. You're right. Okay, cool. So we're just like hanging out and stuff. And Angela, you'll help me look at the chat room and stuff. And
Oh, yeah. I just said hi. I guess somebody had said hi.
Hi. So I'd love to start off by just saying, hey, what'd you do today?
Oh, what did I do today? Well, I picked up my son, and he's a fantastic producer himself. He's a 13-year-old boy who's now working with Lady Gaga's producer, and he's just making so much music. You know, he runs up to his room when he gets home, and it reminds me of when I was that age. All I wanted to do was go to my room, put on the needle on my favorite song on the record, and put my headphones on. This is what you see right now is exactly what I was doing when I was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You know, it hasn't changed. It's music for me.
See, what blows me away is that there is a 13-year-old doing this where there's so many electronics and so many distractions. How do we keep our kids, like, not keep them, we don't, fool them. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that, but how do they just gravitate towards, being creative naturally? Yes.
I have a question to pull that foot out of your mouth. It says, Edward wants to know, he says, you sound like you're from Great Neck. I don't know where Great Neck is. Are you?
I'm from Great Neck on Long Island. I was born in New Haven, Connecticut. And a large part of my family is there, but I grew up on Long Island, about 40 minutes outside of New York City. And that was having that influence of New York right there, but also a very kind of a bedroom community, very nice place to grow up.
He's from Sheepshead Bay.
All right. Fantastic. Very cool.
Oh, thank you. Cool. Okay, so, I guess we'll move on to questions then.
Since they're already asking them.
I know, right? You're prompting me. So let's start so you came into this world, you're already just gravitating towards music. What instruments did you gravitate towards, like, right off the bat?
Well, I was born in 1960, and in 1962, I was born to two 18-year-old parents. And they were listening to a lot of the music of the day, Peter, Paul, and Mary and Ray Charles. I very much remember hearing What I'd Say by Ray Charles and Blowing in the Wind. And there was a lot of music in my house from a very early age. By the time I was 6 or 7 years old, in the mid to late 60s, I was begging my parents for a guitar. It was not about a piano, which of course I learned to play because it was in my house. And my brother took up the drums, so I had to be better than him. I mean, any instrument I had to play. But it was guitar for me. And it was guitar from about the age of 7 or 8. And lessons. I couldn't get enough of playing guitar. And that's how it really started for me. It was all about the Beatles and guitar.
Wow, so lessons didn't bother you. You were okay, like just learning basics and not just going straight to I want to learn a song?
No, I wanted to learn the basics, but what they taught me very early on was and this is, I think, so helpful to parents of kids who want to play. You learn chords, and then you're also learning a song at the same time. So you're really hearing you're getting the benefits of what you're learning at the moment when you're very young. So I learned a Peter, Paul, and Mary song very early. My first lesson, I learned an E minor, and it hurt my fingers. You know what it's like to play guitar, and just to change from two chords, an E minor to a D, from, you take a stick of bamboo, you turn it into water. That was so big to learn that, and just if you can make something out of what you're learning right away, that's very special. One other quick thing about that. About 3 years later, I'm taking guitar lessons like crazy, but I was at camp, and there was a 19-year-old teacher named Mike. I'll never forget his name. Long hair. It's 1969 or whatever. And a 19-year-old, when you're 10, is like the biggest thing in the world, right? And all this music's happening. And I said, so how do you play this and whatever? He said, listen, I'm not going to tell you anymore. Get the second side of Abbey Road and put it on. And just pick up your guitar and play. That's it. I'm not going to tell you anything. Just play. And that was the world in many ways for what I play today. Because you start to anticipate what they're going to do next. And when you can anticipate, that's how you become a songwriter. When I'm writing, I can hear what's coming around the bend. I kind of know what's on the next street before I turn onto it. So that was a big lesson from Mike. So thank you, Mike, if you're still out there.
Thank you, Mike.
Yay, Mike.
Wow.
I had this weird thought. I go a lot from inspiration.
Yes.
And in a way, if you have these moments where inspired bits of song or whatever come to you, if you haven't learned the basics, how would you recognize them?
Oh, well, that's important. Well, it's very important to learn the basics. It's like, I paint as well. And imagine if you didn't have red and orange and green and yellow, but you want to paint something. Wouldn't it be great to just have those colors? So
right.
I always think to myself, learn more, learn the chords, learn these different things. They're all colors.
Right.
That's all they are. They're just colors. They don't have to be, there's not going to be any new discoveries of there's green and there's blue and there's C and there's D and there's G minor. It's not, it's who you are that it comes through. That's why that's why Coldplay sounds different from Leonard Cohen or whatever, they're using the same chords.
It's interesting in photo classes, because my background's in photographic art, right? And yeah, you'd go on these field trips and you'd think, this is crazy. We're all going to shoot the same thing. And then you'd see it in the class. And it's like, no one has shot the same thing, even the same way. Unless you have the obligatory. I mean, you're all going to do those, whatever they are on Notre Dame. There's certain shots you have to.
That's exactly right. I mean, really, was Diane Arbus's camera any different from
right.
Name a photographer with the paintbrushes yeah, right. Did Michelangelo use a different paintbrush than Picasso? Did Paul McCartney? He played a bass guitar. You can pick up a bass guitar and that's your palette.
Right.
So it's really who you are. I'm just
it's what you do with it.
I'm kind of commenting on you saying you have a certain inspiration, and I just say get as many colors as you can.
Right. He says, you are one of the most amazing talents. I was over my daughter's album and I see you wrote one of her hits. How did you accomplish? Between his typing and my reading, we're in trouble. How did you accomplish all you have, I guess? Top-selling books, movies, incredible sports fan. I read your book, Pictures in the Night. I think it's something. He's a fan.
Oh, and I'm very flattered. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess the answer to that question, I'm trying to interpret the question, but I think I have a pretty good grasp on it. I wrote songs for different recording artists throughout the 80s. And I enjoyed doing that, but I was also restless. And then I started to get into baseball in the early 90s. I don't know why. It was a latent love of mine that I wasn't aware of. And when I wrote all these letters to baseball players, I would write it on my stationery, which was November Nights Music, Inc. And I would write to these guys. I would look them up, and they'd be 95 years old, and I would look up certain things about them. And I noticed that they pitched to Babe Ruth.
Oh,
or
wow.
they played on the same team as Ty Cobb, names that we would know. So that interested me that they were still alive. I wrote to all of them. They wrote back every day. I'd be getting 12, 15, 20 letters from these guys in their own handwriting. So it showed. And I remember thinking, I can't do a book on this. I'm a songwriter. I can't do that. I don't know. Does it make money? Does it not? What's important to me? Can I do this? And I remember that was a very key moment because I thought, forge ahead. This is another art form. And from that moment, I always felt, just keep forging ahead. I made a documentary with one camera, but I didn't question it anymore.
Right.
Because I just think that's just another tool. A guitar is a tool, a camera is a tool, a paintbrush is a tool. These are all, I wake up every morning, I'm not sure, what is this going to be? Is it a song? When I have an idea, I don't know how it's going to express itself. But it just does in some way or another. So that's the best answer for like how I make different art forms. I'm not afraid to jump in the cold water because it warms up.
Right. There's a reason.
Gosh, that's inspiring.
Very much. I've never heard of you before, actually. Sorry. And you've made a fan.
I haven't either.
And that speech, in that speech, you made a fan.
Oh,
I'm there.
Right. There you go.
I love it. Maybe expand. So, if I can like kind of back up now, so we've learned guitar. So what came next as far as
those like, tools?
So, okay, yeah, the tools. Fell from.
Well, you know, Lisa, it's funny because I started guitar in 67, 68, whenever it was, whenever the Beatles were everything, and they're still everything to me. But it was about 73, 74, and Elton John was everything as well. And I loved Elton John. And I don't know if you hear it in my playing. It's very basic. I'm a pretty good piano player, but I'm not I'm not as good as, I'm a guitar player first. And I think it's because I was ready to play the piano. I wasn't inspired yet to play the piano. I hadn't heard enough piano playing. I heard a lot of guitar playing in the late 60s. I didn't hear that much piano playing that I could pick out. And it was Elton John that kind of came along, and then I kind of had to play like him, and that's what happened with that. And that just expanded what you can do. Do you know what I mean? Because I write different songs on the piano than I do on guitar, And if it's not happening on a piano, I go to my guitar. They're all in the same room. I just don't know which one is going to make me want to finish a song.
I think, and actually, I know I'm kind of jumping forward, but your last album, I think Steve Reffling was saying, like, you were done with the album, and I'm probably not getting this right, but you were done with the album, then all of a sudden something came to you, and you went over to the piano, and then there was another song. Is that right?
Yeah. What happened when I recorded my first album with Steve, which was Watercolor Day, the album before this record, Circles and Squares. Something just happened, and I wanted to tie up all the loose ends of a lot of the melodies on the record, and I always try and do things that my heroes did. So you know how like McCartney would do a coda at the end, and then he would bring in some other songs, and they would kind of tie up. And I just started writing on his piano in that studio there, and it just kind of kept flowing. It didn't all happen at once, but I wanted to record it as it was going. And that's what kind of tied up Watercolor Day. And that's a very fulfilling feeling when you tie up the whole work, because then it's like there really is a beginning and an end. It's almost like a Broadway show in a way where there's a kind of an overture, and then there's the end that ties everything together.
Wow.
Did you guys see the one, there's a question over here about, and the Beatles documentary, and then he said, Watercolor Days was amazing, loved your tribute to Harry Nilsson.
Oh, that's so nice. I saw Harry Nilsson's documentary, the documentary on Harry Nilsson, I should say, when I was in the middle of making Watercolor Day, and I wrote it. It very much inspired me to write a song called about Nilsson. Of course, I can't remember the title to my own song. Anyway, it was
for the fans to go check out.
Yeah, a very fun song to write and record because it was very much in his
Never
style.
met you, Harry.
I never met you, Harry. In parentheses. That's what always throws me off about the
Edward.
I love parentheses, and I appreciate it. And thank you for keeping those alive. I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah, thank you. No. It was a fun song to record because I never try to be like an artist that I'm feeling at the moment. You know, I have my 10cc moments and I have my Nilsson moments, whatever, but I'm never really thinking about it. And it's funny because when there are reviews of my records, what happens these days, and I know you'll relate to this and you'll know this, I think a lot of reviewers, they say things like, well, on the first song, that sounded a lot like, George Harrison in Living in the Material World. And that sounded a lot like Graham Gouldman or all that stuff. They're looking for influences.
Right.
I'm just writing. I'm just recording. I'm just doing what I'm feeling at the time. So I think they probably did that to the artists back then as well.
Oh, yeah.
There's Buddy Holly in that song, and there's,
Yeah.
Now apply it to school in every literature class you've ever had. Right.
Point.
Exactly.
Isn't that funny? See, and you're absolutely right, but bringing that to the awareness of, oh my gosh, yeah, wow.
Well, you know what? I don't think to myself, what would Paul McCartney do right now?
Right.
I don't think that I'm not trying to copy a style. I'm just
Right.
I just do what I do, and I'm not thinking about. I think of an audience of one. I think is it going to really thrill me when I put the headphones on? I'm sitting in bed with my headphones on, in your favorite spot, and you're playing it, and you want to hear it over and over and over. That's all I'm trying to appeal to. If anybody likes it, fantastic. But
Right.
I used to be a lot more afraid than I was. I'm just not feeling that afraid.
Yay! It's really interesting. I've heard Stephen King, it's a long time ago. Perhaps he has a different viewpoint on it now, but he was always writing to one reader, but the reader was outside himself. It was his wife. Yours in being yourself it's so much more healthy, actually. You can lose a wife. You know what I mean? And careers can end.
Yes. That's interesting you say that. I for people that have blocks when they're writing, I always say this relates very much to what you're saying about Stephen King and the outside person he's writing to. I always think, like, what is the happiest, easiest time that you're ever creating something? And you remember when we were finger painting at, let's say, age 6, let's say it's first grade or something. They put yellow and green in front of you and you put your fingers in it. And you just smeared it around, and there was no judgment of it.
Elsie's eating hers.
Right? But there was no judgment, and you had fun. You had fun, and you weren't judging yourself. So I always say to people, if you have a block, it's because you have an adult editor in your mind at the same time, and you can't edit at the same time you're initially recording. So I actually say out loud many times, when I'm just about to write something, I always say, editor, here's $10. I take $10 out of my wallet. I said, now go to Starbucks, have a really good time, and you can come back at 6 or 7, and you can judge it. But right now, I'm just going to finger paint.
Nice. Very nice.
Beautiful. Wow. Look at you. Okay. I feel a book coming on that will help me. Okay, I have to know, because somehow you prompted this inspiration question. Do you have any secret muses? You don't have to say who they are, but do you have any?
For circles and squares, I had the strongest muse I've ever had in my life. I've written a lot of songs for a lot of recording artists, and I can tell you that I didn't...
Sound?
Yeah, your sound changed.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Can you hear? It's.
Do you hear me?
There you go. It scratched. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
We just wanted to hear it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't miss anything.
I can't even hear it because of the headphones. But I've written for lots of recording artists. I never really had a muse for writing for the Celine Dion's of the world and stuff like that. I just thought to myself, what would they want to be singing right now? What's maybe a unique take on things, whatever. But I met a woman about 6 years ago, and I was so deeply inspired. I was so deeply in love that I found myself getting off my couch and just writing a song a day. It was so amazing. And I really remember thinking that at the time, like, I've never experienced this. And it was, I would say about 6 or 7 songs on Circles and Squares are really about my relationship in as many forms with her. And I'm proud of them. I'm very proud. The breakup moments and the happy moments and the missing you moments. But they were things I wrote that I'd never really written from that feeling before. It was written from a direct feeling, and it was a direct injection as opposed to imagining a flower girl and you're running through the fields. And I've written those songs. You know what I mean? But this was really from a deep, deep place. So I think that's what you asked, right? I mean, yeah.
Do you have over here? He says, I hear your influences. Your Circle and Squares is a perfect mix of the 10cc's, McCartney, and you made it your own. And then he says, Michael McDonald, I think it was in reference to what you were saying.
Yeah, I wrote a song for Michael McDonald back in the mid-'90s, I think, or something like that. And I was so sure that it was going to be a big hit. I was so sure of it. It sounded great. It was produced great. And it was a hit over in England, but it wasn't a hit over here. And it was on the AC charts and blah, 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 and all good, and I'm happy. But it was one of those that I really thought was going to make it. And then there are those that I never thought would make it. Look, my song for Taylor Dane, my first song for her, Tell It to My Heart.
That's what he had.
I almost didn't even give that to my publisher because I didn't really like it that much, But it just goes to show you, deliver everything, finish everything, just do it. So.
Because it's getting sculptured by the next person. Is that maybe why? Or the next?
Well, you just never know how it's going to turn out. It's a good thing to just try and finish what you start.
Is there a sense it's a little bit bigger than just you?
Oh yes, there really is. There's a fantastic, there's a tremendous feeling when you're looking inside a restaurant and you hear your song coming out and you see people mouthing your words and you remember where you were when you wrote them, or even on not even that scale, just when you read a review of your songs or your record and a reviewer beforehand wrote how much it's, I mean, I read today where one of my songs on my new album is very similar to Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite from Sgt. Pepper. I'm thinking,
news to you.
How did they get there? How did they get to that song? I mean, it's so far away from that, but it just tells you that the writer and the artist you interpret your things differently than other people interpret them, and you're just one opinion. So when they ask. They could ask Picasso how he saw his paintings, for instance. He's just one opinion. Right. He's just one opinion. You think he's the ultimate opinion because he created it?
Because he did it, yeah.
Because he did it, but he's just one opinion. He's just one.
My head's going to explode. This is so genius.
So you mean all those photographs I threw away because they were going to end up in the thrift store? Bad idea.
I think it kind of goes to that whole idea that you're doing. It's an audience of one. It's an audience of one. You create for yourself, and however people interpret it, good or bad. I mean, I don't really think I'm better if I get better reviews, or I'm bad if I don't. I just think, do I like it?
And the flip side, I mean, that's where creators have problems, is when they stop creating whatsoever for that audience of one. You know what I mean? When it's completely scripted by somebody else and you've stripped some joy out.
It's very true. In my 20s, I would have 5 different audiences in my head. I would think, will my publisher like it? Will the guy who signed me like it? Will the artist like it? Do I like it? Will my girlfriend like it? I mean,
will my mother like it?
Yeah, I had too many opinions happening at once. And then as I got older, I realized, you know what? I just want to like it, because that's really, I can't please everybody. You know, I just want to please me.
See, it's so true. And I think of spaghetti, like, you know, authentic spaghetti. Everybody has had that experience of the perfect spaghetti. And so they get to all judge it kind of in the same place.
Yes.
There's still going to be a little bit of conflict, well, East Coast versus West Coast.
Yes.
But yeah, isn't that interesting? You're totally blowing my mind tonight.
Yay! And it's not even messy.
And, there you go.
Sorry. Okay. So let's see. We did guitar. We did keyboards. You must play more.
He's got another question right while we're at a moment.
Sure.
My last question, how did you have time to become a clinical psychologist with all you're into? Did you get this ambition from your mother, father, or both?
Well, you know, my mother is I'm very like both my parents. My dad is very kind of grounded. You know, he's a businessman. He's a very grounded guy. So like I live a very kind of incredibly normal life, you know. My mother is amazing. She's a painter and she's a psychologist, and she's written 12 books. She also played guitar when I was growing up. I kind of really am more like her in the sense that she just dove in the water. She just was not afraid to go swimming, you know. And I think I just kind of picked that up in a way. I would love to stay home from school, and I would go to in the winter, I'd go to the heater, and I would put my head up against it in the morning. I'd say, "Oh my God, I have a fever," just because I wanted to stay home and play. I wanted to just. School was so regimented, and
Jesus, we had the exact opposite childhoods. I'm actually getting sick and swallowing the vomit so I don't have to stay home with that woman.
Yeah, I love being home with my parents. I loved, you know, I got my master's degree about 3 years ago in, you know, clinical psychology, and I like communication. You know, my books are based on communication with baseball players. My Beatles movie was based on communication with people that were in the world of the Beatles and told stories. So I very much like. It's very. It's something that comes easily to me. A communication type thing. As a matter of fact, my next book is coming out in April, and it's called 21 Ways to a Happier Depression.
Yay! I love it.
So yeah, it all goes through the funnel of creativity for me, no matter if I got a degree in it or whatever. It's got to come out creatively somehow.
It's funny because I said we had the complete opposite childhoods, but we come from the exact same place in communication, because I've recently decided that I pretty much came out of the womb wanting to tell people things, and I have never experienced a moment of joy in my life where within 5 seconds I didn't want to share it. You know what I mean? So natural communicator, but very different mothers.
Right. Yes.
Okay, Elsie, you must have a question.
Well, I'm only on my first question. That's scary. No, it's all good. I swear.
Well, you asked about instruments, and I did the guitar thing and then the piano thing. And then, as I mentioned to you, my brother wanted to find a way to, you know, get some elbow room so he could play an instrument. He got some drums, but there couldn't be an instrument in my house that I didn't want to play. And the interesting thing about that is when I'm at the studio, I don't really like the first part of making songs, which is usually just putting guitar down. It's not enjoyable to me. It's like pouring the cement for a foundation for a house. I don't enjoy it though. And I don't really like the first few things that go on a song. But you have to do them. You have to do them. I don't really enjoy doing lead vocals that much at the beginning, but you need them as a guide. Sometimes they make it as the lead vocal and whatever. What I love doing is I love putting bass guitar on. I love doing harmonies, love it. I love playing little guitar parts in between things. But my number one favorite thing is when I put drums down. I really love playing drums on my songs. Almost more than anything. I mean, those other things are fun, but I just enjoy playing drums because it's not my main instrument. But I kind of want to, you know, try to see if I can pull it off. That's really the fun of it, you know?
Wow.
You've got a couple comments. He said, oh, shoot, I am so into that because of the timing. I'm not sure what he was into. Sorry. If I didn't have all your albums after listening to you, I would. You were tremendous. There you go.
Well, that is, thank you. Thank you so much for that. That's very, very kind. Thank you. You can get them all on Seth.com. And I'll sign them.
Woohoo.
Hey, that's pretty cool. Okay. So now we're going to talk about, well, let's see, the music. You said you're really big on, you kind of give us the Beatles, your early music listening. You talked about Elton John. What followed after that? How did your musical taste evolve as you were growing up?
Well, I loved all that stuff, and I thought the music of the 60s and 70s, I'm really a child of the 70s mostly, but I thought that the music of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, up until about 1989, 90, 91, was very creative and very melodic. I'm melody-driven. I'm deeply melody-driven, to the point that I know when something gets me because when I hear it and it makes my eyes close. I actually am listening, and then it hits a certain point, and I just go like this. I find myself going like this. And I know at that moment, this is one of my favorites. And that's what happens to me. Music and melody go very deep to me. They're very, very deep. And I just kind of kept listening to music throughout the 70s and 80s. And then I got a publishing deal, and I was writing for a lot of the artists that I grew up with. And that was a tremendous amount of fun. I remember I wrote a song for Al Green. Oh, wow. And that he was a big influence of mine, and I love R&B music. I wrote the Four Tops and Spinners and Smokey Robinson, all those people I grew up with. But it was just a flash ago in time that I remember. You know, I was in my green chair in my room growing up as a teenager, listening to those songs over and over and over again, and then just like, you know, when 5 years go by and you're out of college, and now I was writing for these artists, and it was a great, amazing feeling to see your name on an album and then a CD and whatever it was, and that you're writing for guys that you loved so much growing up, and they're kind of singing your songs, you know. So that was very gratifying, obviously, you know.
Very cool experience.
Yeah.
I know your list is very big on people you've written for, and it was really, really difficult for me to try to like collect all this just from the internet, and it's a massive list.
Oh, thank
Angela.
I have a question then.
Thank
so
you.
Since
really
it's such
cool.
a wide list, right? And these are people that you grew up listening to. Did we have one that really almost turned us fanboy?
I don't understand the question. Translate for me.
Meaning it was just too much. It'd be bad because maybe you don't want to say, you know what I mean? But it is interesting. Did you have the one that, you know, made you a babbling idiot? Oh my God, Al Green or whoever, you know what I mean?
Oh, you mean
like you had just sat down with God.
Yeah.
That's a very good question. Well, my very first cover really was. It really got to me because it's not that they were my favorite group in the world, but I liked them very much because they had a lot of melody to them, and it was Air Supply.
Oh wow!
And so I was, I was 24 and writing songs, and all of a sudden, Air Supply is recording one of them, and Bob Ezrin, who did The Wall, he produced The Wall for Pink Floyd, and it was really amazing to hear those voices. So you grow up and you're listening to the radio. And then all of a sudden, their voices are on your song, and that record went gold right away. And it was my first cover, and I'd written it by myself. So I'm not really a co-writer. I mean, I've written a lot of co-writes, and "Tell It to My Heart" was a co-write, and there were a number along the way. But I always enjoyed writing myself a little bit more. I like that I did it. I don't know.
Right.
mean, these days, a lot of people, there's 7 or 8 writers on a song. I don't understand why it takes that many people to write a song, but
No, I'm still trying to figure that one out.
And when you say like which one turned me around, I was in a room a lot with a lot of different songwriters that sometimes we didn't get covers, but I wrote a song with Jerry Goffin, or I wrote a song with there were a lot of very famous people that I grew up when they wrote some amazing things. But
well, see, and even them, I mean, who was the one sitting next to? I think back in old 30s music or whatever, if you were sitting next to Hoagie Carmichael or something, where it's like, oh my God.
Yes. Well, what I learned from writing with a lot of big name people was that they are just songwriters like myself, and they were searching for the missing lyric like I was. There was nothing. Yeah, there was nothing so outstanding. I mean, they were right. I mentioned the name, but they're just trying to do what I was doing, which is find that melodic piece and, or that great lyric or whatever. I'll tell you, my favorite co-writer of all time that I've ever had, and I'm lucky. I'm a very lucky guy to have had this person as a co-writer, and he's still my co-writer. Is Mike Ruekberg. And we're in a band together. We have my other recording project is the Red Button. And we have this. It's almost like you could go through life having a lot of relationships, and then you find your wife. Mike's my wife. I'm sure, and I can be his wife. I'm just saying, we just have a fit that's, to use the Lennon-McCartney. The word I'm looking for is
what is that word? It almost came to me too.
I know.
Collaboration, melding,
it's the
teamwork, partnership.
Yeah, they all work. I think you know what I mean. I'm not comparing.
Yeah,
I'm not
soulmate.
Not a comparing word. Not a comparing word.
I think my dad's soulmate was a dog.
Not soulmate. No, I know that word. We're both stuck.
Chemistry. Edward says chemistry, and he would also like to know if you were influenced by Brian Wilson. And he says Red Button is a terrific power pot.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, Brian Wilson for sure. I would say my biggest influences in the order of their appearance is the Beatles, Paul McCartney, John Lennon, George Harrison, Elton John, and Brian Wilson, in that exact order.
So Elton John, Bernie Taupin.
Bernie, not as much as a lyricist, because he's such a better lyricist than me. He blows me away. I can't.
I meant as a team. Aren't they kind of that team thing, the same thing?
They are, but in terms of my influences, I wasn't influenced by Bernie Taupin because I could never do what he does. I could never play as well as Elton John, but I liked his melodies and the way he played.
Now, wait a minute. You could never do. So did you actively look at it that way? In writing, I had a friend that said they could never write, and they stopped writing because they became too enamored of William Blake. I mean, did you do that with Bernie Taupin?
No, I never thought of it that way. I just kind of did. I do what I do, and then I look, and then I say, well, that's kind of a line that Lennon would use, or that kind of twist.
Right.
But I never thought I'm going to do it like that. I have such high regard for Bernie Taupin.
He just talks different than you do in terms of songs.
I think he's special. I think he's very special. I think he's a painter more than even a lyricist. Like, he's a painter, like Joni Mitchell. They belong in their own category.
That's nice. I love that.
I love that too. Yeah, Joni Mitchell. I've tried to figure it out, and I'm like, nope, just enjoy it. I like it. Wow, beautiful. So, anyone you'd like to co-create music with in the future, or you just kind of
Yeah, I love making my own songs, but I love recording with Mike. As a matter of fact, the next Red Button record is coming out next year, probably early summer, and we've done 7 songs right now, and it's our best record. We're bursting with wanting to put it out, but I put out my solo record just a month ago, so we can't really put out stuff at the same time, but we have a unique chemistry. I kind of bring the songs to Mike, and he produces the Red Button. I play a few instruments on it. He plays a few things. We don't think, well, I've got to do that or I've got to do that to make it even. We know what we do well, like a good partnership in a marriage. We know what we do. We know what we do, and it works, and we're happy, and we always have a good time recording. And you know, I think I bring a lot of the melody to it. Not that he's a brilliant melodist himself, but he then takes it and kind of adds an edge that I don't have. He has a great little edge to him going, and it just kind of we even each other out, you know, and it's a lot of fun.
It's a partnership, yes. Edward has a question. Did you read the article in Rolling Stone about the making of Revolver? He said it's an interesting read.
I haven't read that. I know that Revolver came out on my 6th birthday, August 5th, 1966. So that's what I know about it. I know the songs, obviously.
Wait a minute, what year?
I was born in 60, but that came out in 66. You know, it came out on my birthday, so I remember
I'm actually younger than you.
Yeah.
I'm never younger than anybody on this show.
There you go.
But he looks like a baby. I mean,
he does. He's adorable.
Right? And you totally proved that music is the real divine youth.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So cool. More applause.
Thank you so much.
So dang it, I had something I was going to ask.
It just totally come out of her mind.
No, it's totally cool. That's how we were supposed to be then. So let's just... Oh, I know. I wanted to ask more about the red button. Because when I was looking up other things you were doing, I assumed it was a project that once was, but you're saying
it's ongoing.
Still going. So when did it start and what's...
Well, I was in the studio recording my first solo album at the age of 44. I had written a song for Rufus Wainwright called Instant Pleasure, which was in the Big Daddy movie, Adam Sandler movie. And I loved Rufus's version, but I thought, you know what, this would be a good beginning for my solo record. I want to record it differently, and I had a bunch of songs, so I wanted to try that. And Mike came by the studio one day because he was friends with the producer. And we hit it off. And I said, let's do a project. And we called ourselves Little Engine because we didn't think we could ever pull this off. The Little Engine that
Little Engine could, yep.
And then we heard that there was a band in England with that name. And Mike then came up with the red button. And we put out our first record in 2007 or 8, something like that. And it just kind of hit. You know, before we knew it, we got a lot of orders for it. We got a distribution deal. It was like, I think we sold 12,000 records of that first red button record. And that's a lot in this day and age. And the internet is that's a lot of records. So we kind of put ourselves on the map at that time. We came in first on a lot of year-end polls for a lot of the, you know, the blogs that are out there and stuff. So we decided to do another record. In 2011, we did another one. And now we're doing our third. And as I say, we have such a good time recording that, you know, when things are fun and anything in life, right, you got to keep doing it.
That's it.
Yes.
You know?
That is absolutely it.
I'm so glad you clarified that because I'm serious. Someone like you, it's hard to find the facts on the internet, and having you here is essential.
Thank you.
I mean, crucial, in
the
fact.
facts.
You know, like, oh my gosh, help me. Okay, cool.
Okay, all right. So as long as we're on that subject, I'm not actually 6 feet. I'm 5'11" and change. But if you're over 5'11", you don't say you're 6 feet, then like, what good is it? What good is it?
Yeah.
Interesting. Again,
that makes sense.
Wow.
You wanted the facts. You wanted the
facts. You want truth here.
Right? Okay, good. I'm so glad you clarified. Okay. So, let's see. What has, maybe we've touched on this, maybe we haven't. What has been your most proudest moments as a musician and a songwriter and a creator?
Wow, that's a real. I think when, you know, when I wrote with Ernie Gold the song "Tell It to My Heart," it was not. We wrote it for Madonna. It was a big. She was huge in the late '80s and whatever. And what you do as a songwriter, you write for the top. And then if they don't do it, you go to the next year and the next year and the next year. But if it's a good song, somehow we'll make it, right? And before I knew it, there was this artist her name was Les Lee. She wasn't Taylor Dane at the time. And I heard a demo recording of her doing it. And it was like, wow, this is the best cover I've gotten. And I had songs at the time that were, you know, as I say, Air Supply, other big artists had done these songs. And she wasn't anybody at the time. I didn't think anything would happen with it. And it got a deal on Arista Records, whatever. I fly out to San Francisco. I was living in New York with my girlfriend who became my wife. And we land at San Francisco. We rent a car. And we're driving to our hotel. I'm 27 years old, whatever it is. I turn on the radio, and Tell It to My Heart is on the radio. That was such a moment. That was the first time I heard that song. And it, you know, it went top 10, and it was just a thrill. Well, cut to about, I don't know, I wrote her second hit, too, called Prove Your Love, which also was top 10. So I'm riding high. I'm a signed songwriter, and my contract was coming up. And they were whining and dining me a little bit, and it was obviously a thrill. I'm in LA, and somebody from my music company, Warner Chappell, said, listen, we want you to meet somebody upstairs at some restaurant we were at. And I went upstairs, and they said, Seth, meet George. And George Harrison turns around. And I'm thinking, I'm really meeting a Beatle right now. I'm really meeting one of my great idols.
Oh my God.
And I said to him something like, I tried to keep my composure, and I said, George, you know, we're on the charts right now together. You have your song, Got My Mind Set on You, and my song is Tell It to My Heart. And he says, oh, my son Danny, he loves that song. I didn't know you wrote that. It's wonderful. And I'm thinking, I'm like talking shop with George. He goes, hey guys, I want you to meet some of the guys. He goes, this is Tom, and this is Bob, and this is Roy. And I met the Traveling Wilburys before the record came out. Well, then it turns out that 2 weeks later, I was at the Grammys because Tell It to My Heart was up for, not as a song, but she was up as a singer of that song. So I was at one of the after parties before the party started, right? And the room was fairly empty. And I look up at the front. This is 2 weeks after I met George Harrison. There's George again. So I'm thinking, okay, my new best friend. And George starts walking to the middle of the room, and I start walking, and I said, hey, George. And he goes, Seth. I'm thinking, he remembers my name with the millions, billions of people he's met. And I said, you know what are you doing this week? You want to write a song? Let's write a song. And he goes, you know, I'm actually working with Bobby on Fridays. So I got turned down for Bob Dylan, and I'm happy about that. I can't.
There are much worse ones.
That's okay. That's okay.
Wow.
So Randy still listens and loves loves Tell It to My Heart, and Edward Herman says it's a great story, loves it.
That's so cool.
I think your sound went again.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Am I back? Okay, sorry.
Cool. Oh, I like that. Okay. Okay. So if you weren't a musician, this is a very, very bizarre question probably. What do you think you would have done had you not just become a successful musician?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question. I always wanted to be a musician, and I never considered anything differently. And I had parents that never looked at a report card. I ended up going to college. I ended up, you know, doing what people do. But I never, it never crossed my mind not to do that. You know, I just kind of had a strong vision, and I was fortunate that it occurred. But at no point did I ever consider anything else. So the question is, what would I do differently? I don't know. Maybe all the other things that I did. You know, I don't know anything other than just making things, creating. So maybe I would have done books. You know, but that's what I'm doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And now come to think of it, that's true. I mean, you've got your degree. You've done documentaries. We'll get to those. Yeah, you kind of are doing lots of other things besides for being a musician. So, more fun. Okay. Yes. Okay. So here's a question I'm personally interested in very much. when you write a song, do you hear it already completed in your head, or do you just let what's coming through you take over? And
you know, songs are the most mysterious art form, because with a movie you have a shooting script, and with, you know, most other forms of art, you kind of know. Usually with many painters, they have a subject sitting in front of them. I find with songs, it's very, very different. You have to have a certain amount of openness at all times. You have to know that you don't know what's going to happen. So you kind of have to be, I said this earlier, you can't really be afraid to go to a diminished chord or to go, whatever. You got to just sing nonsense lyrics as it goes, and you got to trust that what you're hearing, you're liking. I could write 20 melodies right now, and I might not like any of them, so they're gone in the wind. Maybe one of them would have been a hit. I don't know. I don't really care. It's more like I just want to like what I'm playing and singing at the time. And it takes you and you take it. So it's a little bit of a marriage that happens at the same time. But it's a fun journey, you know? So I kind of let it happen as it goes. There's no formula for it. There's no formula. I sit down. It's almost like a feeling. If I'm in a certain mood, there's got to be a number of things that happen that makes me feel in a certain mood, and then a song comes out, or it doesn't. But I don't fight it. I'll tell you one other thing that's interesting. When I started painting about 20 years ago, I noticed that every time I'm stuck on a song, if I'm stuck in the middle of a song, I don't fight it anymore. I go to a canvas and I just start painting. And what that does, if I'm missing a lyric or a bridge for a song or something, what it does when you're painting, you're still being very creative. But you're not thinking at the moment of that song. It goes to your secondary person. It goes to a subconscious place. You're working out that lyric in another part of your brain you're not conscious of it at the moment. And then I always go back and it seems to come out. So paintings kind of, for me at least, they kind of grease the wheels a little bit without me being hard on myself, saying, work and work and work at it and get it. I mean, you do have to do a certain amount of work, but you know, it's kind of nice when you can go to another art form and it helps you with the other art form.
Wow. Yeah, and there's this thing that, I don't know, Angela, if I could use you in this, that when we're focusing on manifesting something, you visualize it, and then you let go. Let it go.
Yes.
And then it just all comes. Cool. Thank you. That's really cool. Yeah. Okay. We're going to get back to music, but I want to take a little curve because, I know you just love that. Beatles stories, the full-length documentary. Can you tell us more about what that is all about?
Well, I was in Liverpool. David Bash, who does the International Pop Overthrow, asked me to play at one of those events. And I thought, wow, to play my record live at the Cavern Club. Now, I know it's not the same Cavern Club. It's down the block on Matthew Street, but to be in Liverpool.
Pretty cool.
How amazing, right? And I packed, some clothes and my guitar, and I threw my video camera in there before I left. And when I was just walking the streets in Liverpool, I would notice that people had a story about the Beatles here and there. And I thought I knew everything, I thought I knew but I realized I didn't know anything compared to some of the deeper stories. So when I got back to Los Angeles, I looked up May Pang, who I knew in music publishing at one time, and at least I could make a connection, but I didn't know her. And I wrote her a note. I wrote her an email. Simple as that. And I said, if you're ever in Los Angeles, I'd love to film some stories. Well, she said, I'm going to be there in 2 days. So I picked her up at where she was staying, and we drove to every place her and John Lennon lived when they came here in '73. And I thought, is this the story of May and John? Is this what is this? What do I have on film here? And I didn't know. And then I heard that the Moody Blues were playing in Las Vegas, and I thought, wow, I'd love to meet Justin Hayward. I love the Moody Blues. So I pitched his manager, and I said, May Pang has already done it. And they said, well, Justin wants to meet you before the show. And that's what you actually see on film. He's in a hotel room, and before I knew it, I was in England, and I got picked up at the train station by Norman Smith, who was the Beatles' longtime first engineer. He was the guy that actually made the sound. He recorded 110 of their songs. And the point I'm making is that I just found people that have these delicious little stories, and it gave me a chance to meet everybody I wanted to meet. Felix Cavalieri from the Young Rascals, and Art Garfunkel. I was in Art Garfunkel's apartment. Here I am, like, there's Art Garfunkel. After the interview, he says, come down into my den. I go down to his den. He starts rolling a joint. And I'm thinking,
I'm smoking a joint with Art Garfunkel.
So we start smoking a joint, and he's like, do you think I was as good as Paul Simon? What do you think in terms of, and I'm like, I'm smoking, I'm saying, you were the Monet of voices. We just went into this whole thing talking about the mamas and the papas and how they compared and all these things, and all the experiences that happened with meeting all, George Martin and so many, the guys that were in the Quarrymen and Sir Ben Kingsley and John Voight. I remember I filmed John Voight at the Beverly Hills Hotel on a bench there, and the manager from the Beverly Hills Hotel came out, and he looked at me. He didn't see John Voight, and he said, "You're not allowed to film here. You're not allowed to do this." He really scolded me. I mean, it's on film. It's not in the movie, but it's on film. And then all of a sudden, John Voight gets up and he looks at me and he goes, "Hey, Tom, how you doing?" And he goes, "Oh, Mr. Voight, Mr. Voight, sorry, I didn't know you were here." Oops. I mean, so like I think to myself, I directed Ben Kingsley and John Voight in a movie, just fun stuff, When you're doing things you enjoy, great things happen,
And did you even think that these are like things that would never be exposed had you not just entered that world and oh my gosh, that stuff could be buried forever.
Well, I want to say one quick thing about that. When people say, what do you do? Like on a real deeper question, what I really am is I love making collages. I love cutting and pasting. I love taking things out of magazines and then pasting them. I love doing that as a kid. That's what I did with Beatles stories. I just found, I interviewed a whole lot of people. It wasn't, the fun of it wasn't setting up a camera. That's the least fun of it. That's the most nerve-wracking. But what I loved doing was, okay, Art Garfunkel's interview goes great with, Graham Nash, when I interviewed Graham Nash. Like, wow, the juxtaposition of those interviews, one led into the other. It was really making a collage. And it's the same as when I make records. I love when I have all the songs at the end of it to think, that would go great here. Now, as well as I do, that these days people say when they listen to your CD, if they ever even listen to a CD, because it's not no one has a player anymore, they'll say, I love song 11. They don't even maybe know the title. I don't look at it that way. I look at it as I'm making a collage. I'm making records the way I grew up listening to them, and I see them as a larger piece of work. So that's what happened with Beatles stories. I just interviewed 100 people. I chopped it down to 50 interviews. Before I knew it, it was in 20 film festivals. And now it's now playing all over the world in different, it's on the Arts channel in England.
Cool.
So every time it plays there, I get all these emails from British people. And it's just a wonderful feeling to know that is going on as well,
So there's a little bit of a sordid thing beginning to happen with you now, Edward, I've got to say. He says he did something bad in a store I worked at, Garfunkel did, and he wants to know if there's anything you learned about the Beatles that shocked or surprised you. The tale of Art Garfunkel, I don't know. You might not want to go there.
I don't know. I don't know about his personal life or anything like that. He was awfully nice to me, and everybody really was. I mean, people invited me into their homes. Before I knew it, I was in... what was the guy that was who played Fonzie? Henry Winkler.
Oh, Henry Winkler. Yeah.
And when he agreed to do this, because I kind of knew his story, and I thought it would be amazing to put in this movie, and he invites me over to his house in Los Angeles, and you make a left and a right, and you're at his house, and there he is, and it's just, he's just a guy, I mean, he's just a person telling a great story, and we could only get stories about the Beatles. Let's face it, after they stopped touring, they were really closed up for 4 years. There were you couldn't really hear these things. So I just tried to make something that you might watch in 100 years and say, we didn't know that. We know that from that.
Right.
Right. Powerful. Is there something else here in the chat?
Oh, yeah, I worked in Herman's Sporting Goods. He stole weight bars. Our security chased him.
Oh. Wow. Okay.
That's a visual.
Yeah.
Are you sure it wasn't just a lookalike? Either way, it's still a good visual.
That's funny.
Oh my God. I love That's All I Know. And no one knows that song.
Oh my God. What a song. You know who wrote that song? That same guy who wrote, that Jim Webb. Who wrote MacArthur Park and Up, Up and Away and Girl, I know you're getting married. Heard you're getting married. That was a big song, people.
Yeah, I think I know that one, but I like how you say that.
Yeah, Jim Webb is a very huge, fantastic, in another league of his own songwriter, and he happened to write that song All I Know as well, which is a fantastic song.
Oh man, that song just gets me every time.
Just so great.
Okay. Editing.
Yes.
So how do you like cutting and pasting? That must mean editing does not drive you crazy, right?
When it came to doing my film, I love editing in a recording studio, but I record with Steve Reffling, and he's just so good. I don't have a recording studio at home. I used to have one. I never really used it because it took away from my songwriting. And this is the example I'll give you. When I'm sitting with an acoustic guitar on my couch, that's when a song takes place. But I noticed when I started to record it, there would always be why isn't the left channel happening? Or why is there too much treble? Or why is there this? Before you knew it, the inspiration was gone. So I really made a decision before I made my records back, 10 years ago, whatever it was. I'm not going to record anymore. I am just going to get the ideas done and hone what I do best, which is writing songs. And then I'll get a great engineer with his own studio that knows that I like to call the shots at, and I really call them out kind of quickly, like that bass needs to come down. I like to mix as I go.
Okay.
Very much like to mix as I go. And so I don't, a record could come out 3 years after I start recording it, but I might listen to that song a year or two in, but we're up to the part that I'm already liking the way that mix is going. If you know what I'm saying. So I absolutely mix as I go, and Steve is a fantastic editor of that. When it comes to movies, I always hire a guy named Mike Pope, who is a fantastic editor. He's a young guy that knows his hands move very quickly. I think you know what your strengths are, and my strength is I see it and I know it. I know what I want to see. I know how I want to experiment. I do not want to do it on my own. I don't want to learn it. It's all there to be learned, and I applaud people that really learn it. I really do. I think it's fantastic. I just would rather take my own money and pay people who know how to do that stuff, because I just need to kind of sit back in an old-fashioned way in a director's chair or in a recording, booth when I'm playing and I want to hear something else. I don't want to have to concentrate on the logistics. I just want to concentrate on the larger vision.
Oh, nice. Good answer. Very cool. Angela, anything while I look for my next
No, but I'm going to have to go soon.
That's fine. That's totally cool.
Feeling like a little rascal or something. Sorry.
No, I know it's she's got the thing.
Plus, I haven't eaten. I'm getting hungry.
Oh, wait.
All right,
Okay,
then I'm going to say goodbye then. Bye. It was
Thank
lovely meeting you. You're such a handsome man and so talented.
thank you.
And I'm definitely going to go buy every one of your albums as soon as I've eaten.
So nice. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And
See
thank you
ya.
for your
Bye.
good question. Okay, thank
See
you.
ya, Elsie.
Bye,
Love you.
Bye. Okay, so The Last Giant, a short film of yours. What inspired you?
Well, I started collecting baseball memorabilia in the mid-'90s. And I really got into it. And before I knew it, I had the ball that went through Bill Buckner's legs in the '86 World Series and the home run that Babe Ruth hit to make him the all-time home run king. And I just got into baseball. When I get into things, I go kind of all the way, you know. And I had a few jerseys, baseball jerseys. I had Lou Gehrig's jersey. I had a few jerseys that I was so proud of. I was like, they wore this. They actually wore this jersey on the field. And, you know, I'm a romantic. So I think to myself, what was the field like in 1932? Didn't even have lights. Imagine going to baseball games in the middle of the day. Imagine what was life like. These objects really were like time machines to places I had never been. Anyway, I ended up getting a jersey of a man named Harry Danning, who was the catcher for the New York Giants in the '30s. And I realized that he was alive. He was in his, late 80s. And I wrote him a letter and I said, listen, if you ever come out to Los Angeles, I'd love to meet you. Well, there was a knock at the door and this 6'4", 89-year-old man knocked on my door.
Oh.
So I got a video camera. I said, Mr. Danning, oh my God. And he sits down and I would ask him questions like, what was it like? He was a catcher, and a catcher sits behind the batters, right? And they catch the ball when the pitcher pitches it. I said, what was it like to be behind Lou Gehrig, the great Lou Gehrig? I mean, his name is going to go down, And he goes, oh, Lou was a nice guy. We would always talk when he used to come to bat. I would ask about his family, and he would ask about mine. It was so to learn about the real things that were said between the legends. And at the end of the interview, I said, Mr. Danning, I have something that you haven't seen probably in 60 years. He said, what? I said, and I brought out his jersey that he wore. And it had his name on the back. And I said, would you sign this? And he signed it with his nickname. And he wrote, Harry the Horse Danning.
Oh, gosh.
And that little film, which was it was not well lit. It was nothing like that. But I put it together and it was 17 minutes long. It was the first time I'd ever really filmed anybody outside of my family. And I just sent it to the Washington, D.C. International Film Festival, and they took it. And it played in front of this huge audience. And it was, it was up as the finalist for the a short documentary thing. And it was just it was just one of those things, Lisa, you do because it's there to do, and why not do it, and why not see it through, And it became something, and that's one of the, thank you for asking about it. I'm never asked about that, and I love that particular moment with this great man.
Oh my gosh. Another great contribution to the world, too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Now we get to, in 1999, you were featured in a PBS documentary, The Passion of Play, about your eclectic life. Yeah,
they were doing a documentary about 4 people's lives. One of them was Steve Wynn, who owned all those Las Vegas hotels, but he was also a collector of great art. And so I was going to be bidding on something at Sotheby's in New York, and they wanted to follow me as I got on the plane and held up my bidding mallet and all of it. And it was just like this crazy thing. And I turn on PBS or KCET out in Los Angeles, and it was just a thrill that they chose me to be somebody that they wanted to, that exemplified to them how passion can turn into a hobby and things that you enjoy doing. So that was obviously I was thrilled and honored.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, because that one, I was trying to look it up. I'm like, I don't get it. So, wow, I love that. And I actually love the win. I usually only get to walk through it, though.
Yeah.
Oh, I once saw this guy in this, like, fabulous suit, and he left the tag on. It was so cool.
That is cool.
I was like, oh, my God. Okay, so let's see. Now, let's talk about your. Okay, we talked a little bit about Watercolor Day. This was your second solo album. I may be all over the place here. When was your first album?
My first album was Instant Pleasure. That was 2004,
Right.
and then Watercolor Day was 2010, and now Circles and Squares is 2016. So I think there's a pattern here. It's every 6 years there's a solo record, and every 3 or 4 years there's a Red Button record. So
Wow.
I think about 12 years and almost 6 records of all original material. I'm very proud of that.
That's cool. How come it took you a while to get to your first solo album after being a songwriter?
I don't think I believed in myself as an artist. I think I did things as I believed, and I didn't. It took me 44 years to kind of feel comfortable enough to do that. And I had a producer. A lot of famous people played on my record. Guys from the band Beck, and so many different LA great musicians. Dorian Crozier produced it, and he just knew so many guys, and they were into the stuff and all that. But I didn't get to play as much on that record. I played, but I didn't have as free a hand as I wanted. And I think with Watercolor Day, I got together with Rick Gallego of Cloud 11. And it was a great collaboration. We co-produced that record. And then at the end of that record, he said to me, your next record, you have to do all on your own because you can do it. So it's a progression. And I always feel as if I want to take shots with the next thing I do. I always want to do something I'm a little afraid of.
Okay.
I don't want to just do the same thing again. I mean, I write 2.5-minute pop songs or 3-minute pop songs, but I try to do different things with them as I progress in life. I want to try things that I haven't done.
Cool.
Yeah.
With this Circles and Squares, this came out
in August, late August. Yeah.
And was it just one of those things where you're like, okay, I have all these songs, I'm ready to go in? What was the process?
Well, it started with, I think I mentioned to you this relationship I was in, and I was writing all of these songs that related to that. But there were too many romantic songs. And so then I branched out and was writing about how I paint, which is actually the title song, Circles and Squares. I start with large circles and squares, and then I fill it all in as it goes. And then other songs that were, one song is about my panic attacks over the years. It's called Sonic Ferris Wheel. And that's what they feel like to me. That's what they really actually feel like. Like I'm just spinning on this thing that I can't get off of. So
yeah, and I'm kind of laughing, but I totally relate. Like I get that. And it's beautiful though.
Oh, thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. So it got filled in. It started really with a lot of romantic songs, but it got filled in. It got dotted with other diary entries of things that go on in my life. Painting and panic attacks. Not literally. Not literally, right. Not only.
Okay. And speaking of artwork and your painting, do you actually do anything with that?
Well, there's a big restaurant in Los Angeles that has huge walls, and they've asked me if I would do a show, and my paintings are very large, and so I think that I'm going to be doing a show in the spring of a lot of my paintings. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, how exciting!
So I'll post that and whatever, but it is very exciting.
In between albums, right? It's like.
I'm just fortunate that I have the time to do it and I can. You know what I mean? So
exciting.
Yeah. Everything everything makes everything else better. You know what I mean?
Everything makes everything else better.
Yeah,
Wow.
I just love.
That.
Yeah, it's just when I create one thing, it makes something else better because I learn from the one thing I'm doing and I bring it into another thing. I bring it into another field. Like my book that's coming out in April, as I mentioned, it's called 21 Ways to a Happier Depression. It's not really about depression. It's not deep and dark.
Right.
It's an art book, really. And it kind of came about because of the other things I do. I wanted there to be a book that was not so heavy and deep, but that when you look at it, you feel somewhat comforted because it's a bunch of things that alleviate that very high tension feeling. So it's not clinical at all. It's very personal and kind of creative. So that's what kind of comes from doing the other things. You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, I know I'd buy that book, by the way. Anyway, it definitely, yeah. And my mind just goes, ooh, it's, pretty,
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
In other words, one day, if you ever see my library collection of books, maybe it will make more sense. Okay, anyway, the inspired musician right here. This is like some really fun questions for you because I think we have about 15 more minutes left. I'd love to have you for like 4 more hours, but it kind of shuts off after like 90. So what has been the greatest concert or live performance that you've ever been to?
Well, there have been many. Obviously, I think a lot of people would say that they've seen many great concerts, but the one for me was in 1976, seeing Wings Over America. Seeing Paul McCartney 6 years or 5 years after the Beatles broke up, around that time, and knowing that he was 200 or 100 feet away from me, and I'm 15 years old, it was beyond anything that I could actually imagine. I've seen some great concerts. ELO in the mid-70s or 77 was great.
Lucky.
And Madison Square Garden. And I happened to be 7th row. I never had great seats, but I just happened to see them. I loved seeing Bread live back in the day.
Wow.
I
can't even imagine.
Right. It was really so fantastic. Elton John was incredible to see back in that time. I really saw a lot of great artists at that time. And the artists that I haven't seen, I haven't missed. I never saw the Rolling Stones live. Now, I like the Rolling Stones, and there was a certain pocket of time, 69 around, that I really liked their stuff. But I never felt compelled to see them. So I've kind of seen everybody I wanted to see,
Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's so cool. Some comments here. I love it. You had really an amazing life. I mean, he has. He's just getting warmed up here. And look at it, and you're still young. He's killing me. How about Ray Davies?
Oh, just one of the greats. I think a little overrated. But still very great. You can't have written some of the things that he's written and not be considered in the upper tier. But I don't go back to Kinks records. I go back to Beatles records. I go back to Beach Boys records. I go back to the things I can sing. I go back to Kinks songs. Like I'll always love Waterloo Sunset and a few others, but I don't find myself going back to their records. It's just personal to me. I'm sure a lot of people, love them very much.
Everybody has their own.
Yeah. I didn't have many Kinks records growing up. There were always Kinks songs I liked.
Cool. I like dancing to them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You just wait. Any bands or artists you're currently listening to now, new or old, rediscover?
Well, I think that there's nobody like Coldplay. I think Chris Martin is amazing. I really do think he's amazing. I love their records. Who else now am I listening to? Yes, I'm listening to a lot of new bands right now, and I can't think of their names. I love the Clientele. That might not be considered new to people. I don't know when their last record came out, but I really love their sound. Love their songs. I love bands that don't just have one song, but have many. You know, I'm in the old-fashioned school of putting on a record and listening all the way through. You know, so I really like bands that have a number of songs that I like, not just one. I'll listen to one, but they don't become like my personal band if they're not a few. You know what I mean?
Okay. Mm-hmm. Cool. Where do you discover your music? Is it radio, internet radio, DJ friends?
I have to say, I listen to Sirius Radio. It's a funny thing. My album is now being featured on The Loft on Sirius. I think it's station number 30 or however they designate it.
Cool.
And of course, when I'm driving, I listen because I want to hear it come up, right? Mm-hmm. And I just hear a lot of other things that I haven't heard. And nice. I'll write it down. And if I'm at Starbucks and it's a song, whatever, I just find a way to definitely find it, you know?
Ooh,
yeah. Any way you can find new music is, you gotta find a way to get it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Cool.
But you know, there's nothing like going to a record store and finding music the way we once did. Now the record store is on your computer, and that's great. That's just another way to get it. But
right.
I liked it when it was palpable, when you could actually, you know, records, they were in a rack and you looked at it, you felt the record, you know, you saw a picture, you know?
Yeah. I know I was never wrong when I picked up a record that looked like I cherish it, and it never failed. I was never wrong.
Yes, very true. And it mattered how much money you had at the time, you know, because I knew that like buying a record was like, if it was, you know, $7 or $6, whatever it was, I couldn't get 3 of them. $18. That was a lot, you know. So you really had to choose the records you bought, you know.
Or you can bring a paper bag with one of your parents' old records and switch them because you're getting something and giving something back. Okay.
Right.
But again, I cherished everyone.
Yes.
Okay. I'm in so much trouble now. Here's one. You also collaborated with Eric Carmen. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yes, I was working at a publishing company, and I was 23 years old, and I looked at the Rolodex of the person's desk that I was sitting at, and Eric Carmen's name came up, and I said, you know what, I'm going to call him. And he picked up the phone. It's the early 80s, and he said, listen, if you're ever in Cleveland, come by my apartment. So my dad was taking a business trip to Cleveland. I said, Dad, let me come with you. I knock on Eric Carmen's door. And we totally hit it off. This is a guy I grew up with. You know, the Raspberries, forget about it, right? I mean, they're amazing. And then I said, Eric, like I said to George Harrison, I said, do you want to write a song? He goes, send me a lyric. So I sent him a lyric of a song I wrote called The History of You, based on the history of things we did together. In the mail, a week later, comes a cassette, and he writes a note. He goes, I changed the title to After You. He said, you're a little too clever for your own good. So I simplified. And he made a demo of 2 or 3 songs we did. And they're actually on my Facebook page of Eric Carmen singing songs that we wrote together.
Oh my God.
And a lot of his fans say, why don't you record those songs? You know, because they really are good. It was very thrilling, as you can imagine.
Wow. That is cool. I do love them. What is the most outrageous CD or album in your collection?
Oh, the most outrageous. Oh, that's a great question. I don't know that I have one that I would consider outrageous.
Yeah, because to you it might not be.
Right? And it might have been at the time, but I don't know if I have anything. What would you consider outrageous? What's yours?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
I don't know what's particularly outrageous.
You're not supposed to ask me.
I know. You know, as I say, I was always into very melodic music. So I never looked for I was not rebellious. So I never looked for like a Clash record when everybody was, I liked songs of theirs that got to me. But I never was attracted to the flame of rebellion. You know, and I respect it. Oh my God, I respect it. It's kind of the fuel in many ways that keeps things going. But it wasn't the thing that fueled, that attracted me. What always attracted me was a great melody. Great melodies. And I grew up in a house not just with current music, but with Broadway music and folk music.
Okay.
My mother would buy records of the Mamas and the Papas in the 60s and just great songs. And when I went to bed at night, she would be blasting records till 2 o'clock in the morning and playing them over and over and over again. So I was like,
Nice.
I would sit up in bed, everybody was asleep, and I would be listening, and I would think, she's going to play that again. And she always did. And it was, you know, I got those melodies in my head.
Man, that's a nice home.
Yeah,
You're exactly
thank
what
you.
you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
So, do you have any live shows coming up, or?
You know, I always end up playing live. You know, I'm not a live. I don't. It's not part of my thing. You know what I'm saying? Making records is part of my thing, and creating other things. But I always end up doing 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 shows. You know what I mean? And so I'm thinking about getting a band together and playing circles and squares and a bunch of other solo things, and we'll see what the next month or 2 brings with that.
Cool. And you know, there's the internet for
Yes.
those of us that can't travel, or.
You know what I always do, Lisa? On my Facebook page, I always end up picking up a guitar and playing a song here and there.
I love that.
Yeah.
I do love that. It just shows me how much more talented I wish I were. So thank you for that. No, seriously, it's really great stuff. You're so broad. It's not just one thing, and you play the whole song.
Yeah, I try to play the whole song if I can remember the lyrics. As a matter of fact, today, just by coincidence, there was a party I was at a few years ago, and Jackson Browne was at the party, and there were 2 guitars, and they handed one to him and one to me. The host of the party knew us both. I didn't know him, and he starts playing These Days. And I played it along with him, and I posted it today on Facebook. So it's like those kind of things that are just impromptu, or I'll play a Beatles song, or I'll play one of my own songs, and I'll just post it. So that's what
I'm not seeing anyone doing what you do, at least not in my personal news feed.
Yeah.
You definitely stand out. It's really inspiring, though. It's inspiring, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I don't want us to get cut off. We're at 8:27. If anything happens, we've never gone this long, but you were so fun.
Thank
so
you.
I really appreciate you.
Thank
We
you.
might have one more thing here in the comments. Okay. Randy says, do you like Neil Diamond?
I love Neil Diamond. As a matter of fact, the song Cracklin' Rosie in 1969, 70, whenever it was, I begged my mother to go out and buy that song. It was on Uni Records with the colorful label, and Neil Diamond, come on. Again, melody. I don't care who does it. I love the Carpenters when it was uncool. I love, it doesn't matter who does what. I just love music.
Cool. And you heard it right here. Yay, Seth Swirsky. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. I expect you to come back again. It'll probably be for something not even seen yet.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be asked, and thank you for your great questions. They were really, this has been really a lot of fun.
Yay, and thank you, chat room. Those were,
Yes, thank you, chat room.
They said, totally loved hearing your stories.
Oh, thank you so much.
Cool. All right, everybody. Good night. Big hugs to you, Seth. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye, everybody.